And we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Best Phone Plans Podcast. Dennis and I are joined today by special guest Mike Dano. Mike is a writer for Light Reading. He's written over 1,100 articles focusing on 5G and wireless. Mike, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Hey, I'm good. Thanks so much for having me today. I appreciate it. A thousand articles? That's a lot.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was blown away.
Wow. Okay. Good to know.
Mike, how long have you been writing for Light Reading or been in the industry?
Yeah, I've been in the industry for longer than a long time, almost 20 years now. I've been covering the industry. I worked for a while at a place called RCR Wireless News, and then for a long time I worked at a place called Fierce Wireless. And for the past two years and change, I've been here at Light Reading, covering all things 5G and mobile.
That's great. That's great. Well, we really appreciate all the work you're contributing to the wireless space, your in-depth articles and research. And I particularly enjoyed some of your articles around T-Mobile's latest announcement. And I thought today, the day after the announcement, it would be a perfect time to summarize what happened and share some of our thoughts around that. So what did T-Mobile announce yesterday? You want to quickly give us an overview of the big announcements?
Yeah, the big announcements. A lot of stuff yesterday. That's true. In fact, I spent all day on it. I had planned to do other stuff in the afternoon, but there was so much stuff coming out of T-Mobile that that was my whole day. So they did. They had one of their Un-carrier press events, and they've got those down to a science. It was only half an hour, which I appreciated. But basically, big picture is what I think is that they basically put like the finishing touches on their sort of post-Sprint merger 5G strategy. They announced a free phone and cheap service for smartphones. They finally took the wraps off their fixed wireless internet service and made that 100% real and commercial, and it's no longer a test thing anymore. And then they also made some announcements about expanding into rural America. And so, you put all those things together, and that's kind of the finishing touches of what they had said they would do if they were to merge with Sprint.
Yeah, so we had home internet, we had a free phone deal, and we had sort of their strategy for 5G. Maybe we can start with the home internet. I feel like a lot of people were kind of excited about that. This is a new opportunity for people in maybe more rural areas to get access to high-speed broadband. What did T-Mobile announce, and what were your kind of reactions to it?
Yeah, I'll be honest, is that I find this whole fixed wireless internet thing fascinating. I think it's a super interesting service. It has so many interesting implications, especially in a post-COVID world where our current president is proposing to spend up to $100 billion, crossing the digital divide with technologies that might look a lot like what T-Mobile launched. It's a super interesting service. But I would say that, what we got yesterday was essentially confirmation, I think, of what we mostly already knew. T-Mobile initially started talking about offering some kind of fixed wireless internet service in 2018 as part of the proposal to merge with Sprint. And then they started testing that service even before the merger was approved. And then even a couple of weeks ago during their big analyst event, they, provided a lot of details about it. And so the event yesterday was really sort of, here's the official thing. Yes, it will be $60. Yes, it's going to be uncapped. Speeds are going to be around 100 megabits a second. Though if you click into the details, they're actually promising 50 megabytes a second and hoping for 100 megabytes a second, and probably will give you somewhere around that. You really don't know. So it's this process that they've been building on for years now, and this made it official. But I think the really important point that I wanted to that I came away from this event with is that they say that they're offering it to 30 million households, which is a large number of households. That's like 1 in 5 American households could get it. What it doesn't mean is that all of those households will get it. it just means it's just it's being offered to those households, but it doesn't mean that all those households can purchase it all at once. Basically what they're just going to do is, in places where they have additional network capacity, they will offer it. And if they don't have additional network capacity, they won't. So really the thing to look at, I think, is the number of customers that they're going to have. And they've said that they're going to have, I think it's, several 100,000 customers by the end of this year. And that's not millions, that's a much smaller number. And I think it's indicative of, the limitations of that technology.
Sure.
I mean, what I've noticed is that they claim this is going to help bridge the internet divide, right? Especially for rural Americans. But what I found, as far as availability, if you look up by zip code, a lot of rural places that I know about here in Pennsylvania still can't get the service because the cell sites haven't had the proper backhaul upgrades or N41 deployed on it and so forth. And the places that are getting it are primarily, suburban or very close to cities. Like, we have a good friend of the show named Sneed Mobile Tech. Like, he's been testing out the service and getting pretty great speeds at his house, although he has been having some issues noticing actual video throttling to fast.com servers, believe it or not. It's on his page. I think has he shared on his regular YouTube channel as well at this point?
I feel like he's been very vocal about it on Twitter, kind of sharing that, T-Mobile's trying to deliver this service, and it really isn't. It's kind of been a rocky start, I feel like, is what I'm getting. Like, they have this modem. It's not running the best software. One of our other guests said the moment you restart the modem, it like completely resets itself, and it's not that smooth customer service and experience that you'd be hoping for.
Yeah, it still feels like it's in beta testing, and I don't know if it's even necessarily should be confirmed or should have got the uptick in price for the level of performance that it's actually been delivering based off some of the testing we've seen from our colleague or friends. Have you had a chance to personally test it, Mike?
No, I haven't. But, probably more than a year ago, I actually did get in touch with somebody who was one of the very early testers of it. And that is, if any of your listeners want to check that out, they can Google it on the lightreading.com site. It's inside T-Mobile's fixed wireless service. And what they said was exactly what you're saying, is that the speeds kind of come and go. Sometimes it's really fast, but there's plenty of hiccups. I think it's all, and that is certainly exactly how my understanding of fixed wireless technology works. Like it can be affected by weather. If there's a tree in the way, that will ruin the signal. It's sort of at the mercy of the elements. It is not as reliable as a wired connection, but obviously it's way cheaper to get into your house, if you're beaming it from a tower a mile away, than having to route a cable all the way to your house from wherever it's going,
Yeah, absolutely. Mike, you had a great article recently you published, kind of 4 big questions about T-Mobile's fixed wireless solution. The first one you had is, can the network handle it? Do you think T-Mobile's network is ready to offer this kind of product where the usage is theoretically going to spike through the roof for these customers?
I mean, it's, the fact that T-Mobile launched it and is officially offering this thing and, counts more than 100,000 customers on it already, like that, I think really does speak to not only the design of T-Mobile's network, but really the capabilities of, modern technology. Like, it is amazing that you can supply a home's internet connection over, 5G or 4G. Like that, if you had told me that 10 years ago, I would not have believed you that was possible. And here we've got that for, to tens of thousands of people all over the country. And T-Mobile's not the only one. A lot of other companies are doing fixed wireless. Verizon has a big operation. US Cellular does.
AT&T.
Rise Broadband. I mean, the list goes on and on. There's actually thousands of fixed wireless service providers all over the country, both big and small. So, and actually there's 7 million Americans today are subscribing to some kind of fixed wireless service. And that doesn't include ones from satellites, So anyway, it is pretty amazing. But it definitely, so the idea that the network can handle it, obviously it can. It's probably, like I said, is probably not as reliable and as fast as a super duper fiber connection. And I think the real important thing is that T-Mobile will decide where in its network it does have that extra capacity. And although that's a decision that they're going to make, block by block and neighborhood by neighborhood, because in one neighborhood they might not have enough spectrum. In another neighborhood there might be too many trees that they can't beam the signal through. In another neighborhood, there's just too many mobile subscribers that need the network and they just don't have the extra capacity. So it's really going to be, up to their individual network planners to decide whether their network can handle a household that might use a terabyte a month.
Yeah, I almost see this following the N41 rollout. Like as N41 becomes available, that has way more capacity on it, and so it's more likely that customers in that region will have the home internet product available to them as well.
That's my assumption too. I'm not. I think that's probably one of many factors. I don't think that spectrum band specifically is the deciding factor. I'm sure it's a big factor, but backhaul to the cell site, the other spectrum that they might have in the area, they could even potentially use some unlicensed spectrum bands to increase capacity, and then they've got C-band spectrum that they could deploy as well in the future. So I agree that that's a big factor, but I don't think it's the only one.
Yep. Yeah.
But that's still, it still leaves a lot of constraints. I don't see the way we're talking about this, with all these different limitations that just inherently come from it and the cost that's going to be needed to make it happen. It doesn't sound like this is going to be a rural American's like saving grace, because the experience that a rural American's probably going to get with, say, a 5x5 block of band 71 that might be all that they're connecting to will be roughly 10 meg maybe, and that's basically DSL level attainable performance on a good DSL connection.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be, the best connection is the one that you have.
That's true.
And so in some cases it'll be amazing, and in some cases it'll be pretty crappy.
Yeah. So do you think our customers going to want this? Is this something that, people are going to need if they have other alternatives?
I love that. I don't know. I'm very interested to see how this is rolled out. And it all goes down to, what you have. If it's better than what you have, obviously you'll go to it, right? Like there's no reason not to. And in fact, you don't have to have a technician come to your house. You could just buy the little modem thing and set it up. And if it doesn't work, you just mail it back. No harm, no foul. So I think a lot of people are probably going to try it if the price is right. What I think is interesting though is this idea of a new competitor coming into the market, because say you live in wherever, Socorro, New Mexico is my favorite example because it's a little tiny town in New Mexico. Say you live there, you typically only have one option for wired internet. So if somebody else comes in, even if they're a little bit more expensive, it's still another option. And so I think that there are enough people out there who are just looking for something different, who are just fed up with their existing provider. I've talked to other fixed wireless providers, such as Starry and WeLink, and they've said they'll come into a new market, and they'll start offering their service, and they are guaranteed 20% of that market, simply because 20% of any market is fed up with their existing provider. So
wow.
they go in just knowing that they're going to get 20%, and then they may get additional based on whatever their prices are or whoever is there. But I think that's interesting that I certainly have been fed up with my internet provider, and I would be happy to have some options.
Sure.
How widespread that is.
Who do you have, by the way? I want to ask.
I have, I guess they're called Lumen now. It's CenturyLink, and it's fiber, and it is so fast. It's way fast. It's great.
And you're fed up with it because that's like the ideal for.
No. That's what I was saying. Is I had another one and I switched.
Oh! I thought you were.
So this new one is fantastic compared to the other. It's like half the price practically, and
yeah.
Speed.
Yeah, no, fiber's the dream. I'm moving. I'm literally moving into a house so I can get FiOS. But yeah, no, I agree, man. Competition is definitely needed in the internet service provider space. Like my apartment complex that I'm in right now, you can only get Comcast because they have a contract with them. When I grew up back home, and I grew up in a small town of like 600 people, only option was a cable operator called Armstrong Cable. They were small, and I was happy when they came out because before that I was on DSL, and before that, up until 2001, I literally had dial-up. So it was definitely good to get competition. I am just a little bit more skeptical, I guess, of this wireless solution because at first I was excited, on the promises of 5G and what it's going to bring. But then as time has progressed and I've been seeing videos come out with reviews of the performance in different markets and, the complaints that you see on the forums and stuff, I've had tapered expectations because the product, like the thing that it's delivering has been that much different from what we've seen from fixed wireless solutions back in the LTE generation from like AT&T or Verizon or so forth. To me, it's just another one of those. And I don't necessarily think it's the pill that's going to solve America's internet problems, especially if we're talking about home internet for the future. Like if it can't even meet today's needs, how is it going to ever hope to accomplish the future needs, which are going to be even more demanding as far as bandwidth is concerned?
Yeah, I think that's true, and I would agree. And I think it's interesting to, I think that COVID really has had an impact on fixed wireless because, COVID essentially, raised overall internet traffic, a lot more than expected, and generated a lot of demand for that uplink part, not just downlink but uplink, and those two things are where fixed wireless really struggles, is like giving a fast uplink and handling a lot of data, and COVID sort of moved the goalposts for fixed wireless by a couple of years, I think, at least.
Yeah, even cable internet, when it comes to upload speed, is horrendous. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm stuck on 10 meg, and even the most expensive gigabit package only came with 35. So,
well, let me tell you about my fiber connection. Very nice.
Yeah, and you're probably only paying $50, I guess, because Stetson's paying
I literally am paying $50, and I have symmetrical uplink and downlink.
That's amazing. That is amazing, Mike.
I know that because I on Reddit, I follow all the ISPs so I can see all the internet that I can never have.
Yeah.
But anyway, Stetson, I'm sorry for hogging the mic, man. I think you had a question.
Yeah, I guess the final thing here is, can T-Mobile meet demand? We talked about, is it a good idea? I think, yes, this is an excellent idea for T-Mobile and for consumers. They need the competition. But is T-Mobile going to be able to meet demand for this product? Like, are they going to be able to get enough of the Nokia gateways in that they need? Are they going to be able to boost their network capacity in the markets that need it? Mike, what do you think?
Yeah. I mean, if I were to guess, and I'm totally guessing, I have no information on this one way or the other, but I suspect there's going to be a lot of demand for this. And I suspect that T-Mobile is going to struggle to meet that demand for a variety of reasons, one of which is, I don't think we've touched on yet, is that the global chipset shortage. They specifically mentioned that as a factor in their ability to get enough of the equipment out to people, that they just can't buy enough chips to power this stuff. And that issue has, that global chipset shortage thing, like that's a legit thing. Like, I think it's affecting Xboxes and cars, and and here we are, here's another thing that it's affecting. And so I think that there's that as well. And that's separate from the network capacity issues that, and, to be fair to T-Mobile too, they're not even a year into their network upgrade program. Their merger with Sprint just closed April of last year, and so wherever they are now in their network upgrade, it's going to get better as time goes on. And they're going to add more spectrum to that and more transmission sites, and so I think it's only going to get better from a capacity standpoint.
Sure.
Well, fingers crossed. Now, T-Mobile talked about something else that was interesting and I feel is a little bit controversial. They were talking about upgrading all existing customers on limited, like by the gig plans, to an unlimited plan. Now, Mike, when I was doing some research on this, it looks like they're being bumped up to the internet as, the Essentials plan, the unlimited Essentials plan, based off what CNET did as far as questions is concerned. And I wanted your take on this change. Like, do you think this is a positive thing that the T-Mobile's doing, or do you think it's like a net negative for these people?
I mean, I have to imagine it's a positive, right? That if you previously were, limited to 10 gigabytes or whatever it was, and now you're on Essentials, you're not limited anymore. So I think from that perspective, it's probably a good thing for those customers. I think it's interesting for T-Mobile because on the one hand, they're basically saying that we're not going to charge you extra for usage anymore. So they might be giving up some revenues, charging people for, going over their data allotment. But on the other hand, probably they're getting a lot more traffic. Probably they're opening the door to a lot more traffic on their network because now you could just stream whatever. But I suspect that their network planners are well aware of the ramifications of this move and are prepared for it. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure what the ultimate net all of that change is going to be, and how much it's going to affect T-Mobile or not. I'm not sure.
Well, I think for T-Mobile, it's a net win. I mean, it allows them to simplify their biller. The reason why I should probably give some background real quick so that you have a full understanding. Basically, the old plans that are going to be migrated over to the Essentials plan would have been the old Simple Choice plans. These Simple Choice plans, they removed the whole overcharges. It would just slow down the 2G data after you reached your allotment, and you would have some amount of data. And then they had a data stash where you actually got to hold on to any unused data from like a month for like a year's worth of time. And you had flexibility to use this data however you wanted. Like if you wanted to use 30 gigs of hotspot data because you had 30 gigs, you were free to do so, and that was priority access. Now, with T-Mobile Essentials is a unlimited plan, but it's deprioritized data. Hotspot, there is no like fast hotspot data. It's just all at 2G speeds, which is like 128 kilobits per
600 kilobits per second for hotspot.
Excuse me, 3G speeds, 600 kilobits per second. And yeah, I don't know. For me, I thought it would be a more touchy issue because like I would be upset if my plan got changed. Like if I was a customer that was maintaining one of those old Simple Choice plans, there was probably a reason why I was doing it. Whether it be because I didn't need the unlimited data options because they were too expensive, or because I wanted to have that extra hotspot usage. I don't know. I thought it was a little more touchy. Stetson, your thoughts, or are you kind of in Mike's camp?
Well, so I think on one hand, I think it's good. Like those people no longer need to think about data usage. They can just use their phone however they want. On the other hand, I think it's kind of interesting where they're being deprioritized where they previously weren't. I don't know how much of a difference those people are going to notice or even care about that. But as long as their price is the same, I feel like they're going to be okay with it. And as you said, Dennis, like this is really a T-Mobile move. They need to simplify their billing system and their billing structure, and they just wanted to present that in a more positive light, which is why I think they kind of made that announcement.
Yeah. And to be honest, I don't know all the ins and outs of all their different pricing plans and stuff. But what I do know, though, is that, for T-Mobile, this makes a lot of business sense because, let's be honest, I mean, their goal is to make more money, right? And so, and their strategy for making money on 5G is literally the exact same strategy that AT&T and Verizon have. It is a series of tiered unlimited plans. So they want everyone to start on the cheap plan and get comfortable with it, and then decide, for $5 more, I'll get Netflix, or for $5 more, I'll get, hotspot, or whatever it is, and then to upgrade to the more expensive plan. And so in that respect, that's what T-Mobile is hoping, is they'll get everybody on these entry-level plans, and then eventually they'll want to upgrade to the more expensive plans, and they'll make more money. And that's exactly the same strategy that AT&T and Verizon have.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think the sort of last huge nugget of news, or maybe we could say that T-Mobile mentioned that anyone who is switching from Verizon or AT&T on those fixed data bucket plans, they would actually give you a cheaper plan or be able to match the price. And so, Mike, I was curious what those rates were. I went on Verizon's site, and they have a 5 gig shared data plan for $130 a month, or about $30-$250 per line. Plus, you have to pay a $25 line access charge. So you're looking at $57 per line for shared 5 gigs of data. I mean, I think T-Mobile just took a golden marketing opportunity and spun it in the best way possible, because these shared data plans are super expensive. If existing Verizon and AT&T customers literally just switch to the corresponding unlimited plan on the same network, I think they'd be saving money. So
yeah, I agree. I actually have a question for you guys. Is that so I continue to try to cover the, they charge this much for this gigabyte and they charge this much for that. Navigating their websites and figuring out those pricing plans and then comparing them is like doing advanced algebra for me. It is so hard to figure out what you're getting in those plans, what all the stipulations are. I find it practically impossible. So when T-Mobile says, we'll meet or match their price, I can almost never figure out what that actually means. What is the price that they're meeting? I don't know.
I have generally learned to not trust any company at face value, and the trick is to read the fine print that no one likes to read. Honestly, I'm a T-Mobile customer. I've been with them for 6 years. Younger version of me definitely drank the Kool-Aid of John Legere and his hype team. But I found that T-Mobile it can be pretty disingenuous at times. So I'm going to be really curious to see what this looks like, because if they're matching the price of a very poorly priced plan from Verizon, then is that even a good option to switch, right? I know. I'll give you a good example. Before my parents before I basically took over my parents, some of my parents' financials, right? I was looking at bills and stuff. We were paying AT&T $173 and some change for a 35 gigabyte mobile value share plan. And there was a tablet line on there that God knows why it got added and all that jazz. Literally, I made the switch for us to go over to Unlimited Elite, which ended up being a net exact total, roughly the same. But we got obviously 100 gigs of priority data. Each of us got 30 gigs of hotspot for each of our lines. We got HBO Max for free, which is hands down one of my favorite streaming services. And I ended up being at the same price point, but with a way better plan, right? And basically the moral of the story was this: is if I'm going to switch to something, especially if we're talking unlimited, I definitely want you just to give me whatever your best pricing is and not even convolute it.
Yeah.
100%. No, yeah, Mike, you bring up a great point. I mean, what I do is kind of like Dennis said, scour the website, just stare at it for a really long time until it eventually sinks in, read the fine print. And then I have my own website, bestphoneplans.net. And what I try and do is really make it as easy as possible to compare the plans on there so you can clearly see the differences at a glance. And I guess I'm thankful for job security at this point.
Yeah, yours is a valuable service, that's for sure.
Thank you.
Mike, I gotta ask you real quick. This wasn't planned, but who are you currently using right now?
I'm on AT&T.
Yeah,
gotcha.
It's really good in the Denver area.
It is really good up here in Pittsburgh too.
Yeah.
But did anything that T-Mobile say make you reconsider AT&T? Did anything maybe entice you a little bit?
No, not really. The best service is the one that works where you are, and so mine does. But yeah, I'd love to cut off a few dollars from the bill, but the prospect of moving everyone over, I'm willing to pay $5 extra a month so they don't have to do that.
Yeah. The convenience is worth it.
You mean that free phone deal for the A31 didn't get you?
Yeah. It sounds like more work than it's worth. Yeah, I'll keep my old phone.
That's actually a good segue. I think that was the last big nugget was this free 5G phone. I think it's the A32 5G that T-Mobile is offering. Mike, what was your take when they announced this on stage? Was this yes, this is awesome, or well, maybe we should just wait a minute and look at what this actually is?
My excitement at that announcement actually decreased dramatically over the course of yesterday. Because he came up and he said, free phone, cheaper service, and how can you beat that? They're giving a free phone and the service is cheaper than their competitors, and the network is better, by most measurements. It's how can you compete with that? Well, you dig into the details, and it's the the free phone is, it's a pretty standard offer that, a lot of other carriers can either match or beat. And, the service prices are all about the same anyway. And so, I saw a summary of that announcement, which was summed up by the phrase "clever marketing." I think that's true. I mean, I'm not, and that's not to take anything away from T-Mobile. I mean, to have clever marketing is a very, it's a real good skill to have as a company and as a marketing department. But yeah, I think it's the case where it's, it sounds really good. It is not bad. But it's not necessarily revolutionary or that much different from what other companies are offering.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think Verizon actually did something that was revolutionary. Did you see their promo for the $1,000 up to $1,000 broken phone doesn't matter? We'll give you something new. It was an April 1st. It was on April Fool's Day. Actually, I think they came out with that. Yeah, Stetson, why don't you tell them a little bit more, because you know the details on it.
Yeah, that was basically same kind of thing where T-Mobile's like, you can trade in any phone. As long as it works, you can trade it in. We'll give you this free 5G phone. On April 1st, Verizon launched their promo, which was you can trade in any phone, broken or working, and you can get up to $1,000 of trading credit. Of course, that's the top end up to mark, where you trade in like literally, I don't know, a new iPhone 12 Pro or something, where you literally paid that much for the phone to begin with. But I think it's kind of interesting seeing carriers offer these deals. But what I think it comes down to is that the credit for the phone is applied over a 24-month financing agreement. So what T-Mobile is doing is effectively making this offer seem really sweet, trying to get as many people as possible to switch over, to sign up, and then kind of low-key lock them into this 24-month financing agreement with what ends up being kind of a low-end Android phone. If you decide you don't want it or you want to switch, like, you'll have to end up paying for that, which, I don't know, not super worth it in my opinion.
Yeah, the only way you come out ahead on it, because the way T-Mobile does their trade-ins, basically they take the cost of your phone and apply it as immediate credit. So, like, if they value your phone at fair market value of $80, they take that off the cost of the phone, and your financing amount is basically that remaining cost by the 24 months, and each month they give you a credit. So the only way you win on this really cheap deal is if you find some, like, really old flip phone, basically, and give it to them. Because if you give them something even remotely decent, like even an old iPhone 6, right? So we've seen them sell for at least $100 on Swappa. You're kind of taking an L. I mean, like, you're better off just selling that phone and getting the cash and then buying something you actually wanted, Yeah.
I mean, and phones are pretty cheap. I literally bought a flip phone for $10 for my daughter. So, you could literally go buy a new one and then trade it into T-Mobile and get this one.
Yeah. So it seems worth it. I think what's almost more interesting to me here is, after hearing the announcement, something clicked where we had Roger Etner on a couple episodes ago, and he said the real benefit to 5G is that carriers are going to be able to deliver data to customers at a much cheaper rate. And so I thought, this is almost genius on T-Mobile's part. Switch as many people as possible over to a 5G compatible phone, and all of a sudden they can start delivering 5G data at what should theoretically end up being a more or a higher margin cost for them, so they can earn more money. And maybe now we can kind of segue into like the T-Mobile's 5G strategy at this point. Like, where do you see T-Mobile's 5G strategy as it stands today? And maybe how do you think it would compare against Verizon and AT&T with what they're doing?
Yeah, you've entered into this is my sweet spot right here. This is what I spend all my time on. So sit back and relax while I yammer on at length about 5G. But I mean, T-Mobile has a very very clear and pretty compelling story around 5G, and it can be summed up in two numbers: 2.5. I mean, that is their midband spectrum. They have a stupid amount of it all over the country, and it's pretty ideal for 5G. And in fact, it's interesting because Sprint actually had that spectrum forever. They had it for years and years and could not put it into use because of the nature of that spectrum. It requires more cell sites. And so when T-Mobile bought Sprint, they also got the ability to invest in upgrading the network, building out the sites they need, and actually turning it on. And so it was just sort of the right confluence of events of, being able to acquire all that spectrum from Sprint, getting enough money to start upgrading their network so that the transmission sites are in the right place, and then also having this technology 5G, which is just ideal for that 2.5 gigahertz spectrum that they got from Sprint. And so, and then combine that with their low band spectrum, their 600 megahertz spectrum that they bought in the auction. That's great for coverage. And then this 2.5 gigahertz that they got from Sprint, that's really good for capacity. And then in locations where they need even more capacity, they've got a really large amount of millimeter wave spectrum that's ideal for places like football stadiums and airports and stuff. Put all those three things together is that T-Mobile has a really good 5G story, and they're investing in some of the real fancy 5G technologies, sort of the future stuff, because they upgraded their network to the standalone version of 5G, which is fancy and will do your laundry and wash your socks and clean the dishes and whatever else it does. Anyway, it's super cool, and they've also upgraded to that. So their story is pretty good, and the story that AT&T, Verizon, and especially AT&T is not nearly as compelling as the story that T-Mobile has. And in fact, if you listen to the AT&T folks talking about 5G, they're just not interested in it. They don't really, they're like, we do it, it's fine, it's great, whatever. Here's HBO Max is what they have to say about 5G. Verizon's a little bit more excited about 5G, but really it is hard to beat T-Mobile's 5G story.
Yeah, the other carriers really didn't have that sweet mid-band spectrum until the recent C-band auction. Now they own it, but they can't deploy it until later this year, early next year is kind of what I'm hearing. How important do you think millimeter wave is to T-Mobile? The free phone they're offering, it doesn't even support millimeter wave. A lot of the devices they carry, especially the more budget ones, only have the mid-band and the low band. Where does the high capacity millimeter wave fit in for T-Mobile? Do they need it? Do they care about it?
Yeah. They have so much of that 2.5 gigahertz that they almost don't need to at this point. And so really, I think that, the only reason we're talking about millimeter wave is because Verizon made a big deal about it in 2018. And they only made a big deal about it in 2018 is because they didn't have anything else, any other spec. They didn't have any C-band spectrum yet to make a big deal about. And so that's really the reason that we're talking about millimeter wave. And in fact, across the entire rest of the world, no one really cares about millimeter wave. It is only now being deployed in places like China, Russia, Japan, and South Korea. And that makes a lot of sense because it is really, that millimeter wave spectrum, I think, will play a very important role in the future in places like airports and downtown areas and football stadiums and concert venues and that kind of thing. In the future, when a lot more stuff is connected and we're just using more data, but right now, I think it is a smart decision by T-Mobile to just sort of ignore it for now. They just don't need it yet. I think they'll need it in the future, but probably not yet. And you're right, that phone does not have millimeter wave spectrum, and that's probably why it costs $300 or so retail. Yeah. I think if you put the millimeter wave in there, it may cost more, and that would make it harder for T-Mobile to make it free.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I definitely think the mid-band approach is definitely going to be like a good sweet spot for right now. But I don't necessarily think millimeter wave should be ignored per se, because it's the only real flavor of 5G that's living up to like these magical promises of like the really, really ultra low latency and like the really, really cool stuff. Because right now, based off of my network testing with N41 in my market and the spots that I've seen it, performance has been roughly on par with what LT could technically do if it had that same amount of like spectrum dedicated to it, right? Like I lived in South Korea for a month, and LT advanced, all over the place over there. Getting 400 meg on an LT connection wasn't unheard of. Heck, even getting 600 meg during like non-peak hours also wasn't unheard of. And like 600 meg back when I was doing my speed test was kind of like the cap, just based off the Intel modem that was inside like the iPhone 8 Plus. So I don't know. The performance I'm seeing on 5G, the real gains that have been notable are mainly coming from latency. Really, that's the big improvement. I think ping times have dropped about like between 20 milliseconds and like 10 milliseconds on average.
Yeah, it's definitely great for sure. And yeah, I'm excited for all flavors, but I think you're right, Mike. I mean, T-Mobile's kind of winning the race to 5G right now just because they have the spectrum and they're deploying it, and the other carriers they were kind of at a disadvantage. Like they just didn't own the spectrum. They couldn't deploy it if they wanted to. And I think we'll really have to wait and see until next year where Verizon just switches the hype machine from millimeter wave to midband 5G and we get that. One carrier that isn't really being talked about that much or at all because they don't really have a network is Dish. I'm kind of wondering, what is your take on what Dish is doing? What do you see their strategy as being for their 5G rollout?
Yeah. Boy, Dish is such a great story. I'm constantly entertained by the stuff that they do. And the way that I look at Dish is, so they've been buying spectrum licenses for the past 10 years, or even more than 10 years. So, that there's the speculation about what they might do. This has been years and years worth of, is the owner of Dish Network, Charlie Ergen, is he going to build a network or is he not? Like I've probably written that story every year for the past, 6 or 7 years now. But just lately, they've made a lot of announcements and they've made some actual real purchases and some real concrete steps toward actually building a network. The two biggest ones are that they bought, they spent more than $1 billion to buy Boost Mobile. And then they also, in my mind, they've hired a bunch of like pretty significant people who have relocated to Denver to work there, and among a lot of other announcements. And so if you look at those things, on one hand, Dish might not do it, right? They might just sell their spectrum and get out of the business and call it good. Or they might actually do it. They might actually build a network and become a fourth network operator. If you think that they're not going to do it, then all the things that they're doing, you have to sort of explain away. Well, it's this, that. You have to give excuses for why they're doing what they're doing. But if you believe that they're going to build a 5G network, then all the things they've done so far make a lot of sense. Of course they would. Of course they would buy Boost. They're going to build a network. Well, of course they'd hire all these people and get this tower climbing and sign all these long-term tower agreements. They're doing it because they're going to build a network, right? So that's kind of how I'm looking at it. Is like there's a certain possibility that they'll just sell that spectrum and get out of the business and call it good. But based on their activity so far, it can all be explained by the fact that they're serious, that they're really going to build a network, and it's going to happen. So we'll see what happens. But I'm leaning. Everything I'm seeing just leans me toward they're serious. They're actually going to build that network.
Sure. Who do you think this network would be for? I feel like the market's very saturated right now with Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. Consumers, I feel like, are pretty happy with what they have. No real reason to switch unless there's a sweet phone deal or something. Who is this network going to be for? Is it for consumers? Is it for businesses? What do you think?
Yeah, right. I think that's the question. Like, who's going to buy this? I think that's the real question. Like, I don't know who's going to buy it. They've got all these Boost customers. I mean, who else needs a network? You've seen rumors like Amazon is going to use put all their drones. They're going to have this like huge army of drones that will rule us all, and they'll all be connected on Dish's network. Maybe. We'll see.
They kind of need a network first.
Yeah, they need a network first, and then they need customers. And I think the network is a lot like I would bet on the network before I would bet on customers for it.
So interesting.
Yeah, I don't know how many are out there for it.
And with the capex that they have dedicated to building out the network, I think it's only $10 billion over the next 3 years?
Yeah, a couple of years. Yeah, that's their price tag for the whole thing, supposedly.
I was going to say, shucks, Verizon spending $10 billion alone just on deploying C-band, not even talking about their normal capex spending for maintenance and upgrading other relations to sites. So I'll be curious to see if they're going to be able to do this alone. I think, maybe you'll agree with me, but I think that Dish needs to partner up strategically with someone that actually has the funds. Like having a partnership with Amazon, I think would make a lot of actual sense as far as synergies, because Amazon can handle a lot of the stuff with their AWS team as far as website hosting and taking payments and facilitating those types of things. And like you were talking about, Amazon could also use the network for their drone delivery service that they're, working on. Mike, do you think that's like a likely outcome? Dish ends up partnering up with someone like Amazon, or?
I mean, I don't know. I don't have any insight into that. Dish continues to hint that they've got some sort of fantastic partners, but they never materialize. And rumors that Google will get into the business, or Amazon or somebody that's been around for a long time, and it's never paid out. The closest we've gotten is Google Fi MVNO.
Yeah.
And that's, it's an MVNO. You just pay them the bill. It's not like they're doing anything really. And so I would be surprised if there's some sort of amazing partnership, for Dish in the future. It's possible, but I think the chances are low.
Well, how about the cable operators, Mike? Have you been paying attention to them and their participation?
Oh yeah, so cable operators are super interesting. Yeah, as you guys know, they've got the MVNOs that they offer mobile services with a MVNO partnership with Verizon, and they're pretty serious. They bought a bunch of spectrum in the CBRS spectrum auction. They were supposed to buy spectrum, C-band spectrum, but they actually never placed any bids during the auction, so they walked away with zero. And that head fake cost them $100 million, which was the cost of entry. They placed one bid during the entire auction. And so now I actually think that their strategy is becoming pretty clear, is that they got a new MVNO deal with Verizon late last year. And from the terms of that agreement have not been released, but it looks like they got what they wanted from Verizon, because both sides now are sort of saying nice things about each other. And also they have all that CBRS spectrum. And actually, if you go to the lightreading.com website right now, there's a story about Charter. Charter is in the early stages of testing what it would be like to operate a mobile network in that CBRS spectrum. So I think there's clear indications that they're going to build a very small scale, localized mobile network that will reduce their MVNO payments to Verizon. But I think that's the extent of the cable ambition. I think that they'll just continue. They've got a new MVNO deal with Verizon, so that's set. They've got the CBRS spectrum that'll reduce their payments to Verizon, and they'll just, kind of keep on keeping on. Cable continues to be very boring. And I think they like that. They want it to be boring. They don't like surprises. They'll just keep doing what they're doing, and it'll make them some money, and they'll be happy.
You don't think they're gonna really go gung ho at some point in the future and take that as an opportunity for growth? Since cable, like you said, it's boring, right? It's a saturated monopoly. There's not really that many growth paths. Actually, if anything, they're losing money with TV subscriptions going down. The only thing they can, and no one has a house phone. The only thing they can really sell is internet. So you don't think they're going to go gung ho into this because that's going to be a new way to generate more profit and make up for those losses?
How are they going to do it though? That's the question. They'll need spectrum to make a big play, and they don't have any. And I also think, there are thoughts that cable will eventually partner with Dish. Right? Dish is building a big network, and cable could partner with Dish. The problem with that is that the satellite TV industry and the cable industry are mortal enemies, and especially cable does not like Dish Network and Charlie Ergen, the guy over there. They don't like each other. They never have, always speak ill of each other, and cable likes really robust, reliable stuff, and that's why they have a deal with Verizon. The time that it's going to take for Dish to have a network that's anywhere close to Verizon's network is a long. That's a big that's a big project, and I don't think the Dish is going to get there anytime soon. Which means that a potential partnership between cable and Dish for 5G is at least 7 to 10 years down the road, which would be the time that a Dish network would be as capable and as extensive as a Verizon network, and
Well, and then we'll be at 6G, and they'll have to fix everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, hypothetically speaking, if a merger like that did happen, where all the cable providers just made a big conglomerate with Dish, I actually think it would have perfect synergies. So as you know, like cable operators, they have permits, typically speaking, with all the municipalities for the utility and everything like that. So if they decided one day to flip the switch and say, hey, we're going to start offering 5G wireless service, they could very quickly go over to all the places they have these little Wi-Fi hotspots around. Like over here in Pittsburgh, Comcast is like massive, right? They got Wi-Fi just chilling on every single like pole, like as you go down like the street. At the big churches, they have like you can see like these massive things to give people like public Wi-Fi hotspots for accessibility reasons. In fact, during COVID, they made them free to access for everybody. And all they'd have to do is instead of having those Wi-Fi boxes there, just swap that out for some 5G antennas. The backhauls already there, right? And then boom, you got a millimeter wave site on like every corner, right? That's the millimeter wave dream. And then for the macro sites, those are fairly easy to get. You know, you partner up with Crown Castle, you know, they own most of the sites, or somebody else, and boom, you got your macro sites to deploy. What is Dish's spectrum holdings anyway? What do they actually have in comparison to everybody right now?
Yeah, the Dish's spectrum holdings are, you know, sort of cobbled together from a lot of different things. So they have a bunch of AWS-3, they have some AWS-4, they have a bunch of CBRS, but that's not part of their initial build out. I think they have some HEV 700 as well. Yeah, it's kind of all over. It's weird stuff.
So are they spectrum starved compared to the others?
No. So total amount of spectrum that Dish has is actually very comparable to AT&T.
Wow.
Okay.
Minus C-band. So aside from C-band, Dish would be number 4 in terms of spectrum ownership across the country. So they actually have a lot of spectrum, but it's like you have to sort of assemble all these weird bands together to get them as big as AT&T.
And are they all going to synergize? Because you can't pair certain bands with others, right? For carrier.
That's part of the problem. Is they've had like all these weird things about their spectrum band. Is like some of it's approved by the 3GPP and is available for usage in phones. Some of it is not. They've got issues with that. With freeing up all that spectrum for mobile use.
And how do they fix that? I mean, do they just have to try to sell it off and get the proper licenses, or how do they get that resolved?
Yeah, I mean, some of their licenses are still being debated with the FCC. Some of their licenses are not supported by current devices and networks, and some are. So their initial build that they're starting now is all the like officially supported stuff that they can get equipment for, but not all of it. And actually, they, if you count all of their spectrum, they actually have like a whole bunch of weird holdings, like at 12 gigahertz that no one uses 12 gigahertz, but Dish has like 500 megahertz almost in 12 gigahertz. So they're working with the FCC right now to make that available for 5G as well.
Oh my God!
Yeah, that's under discussion right now, and it's unclear whether it'll be available. But yeah, Dish has a lot of weird stuff that, if their master plan works out, it would be pretty impressive, but it's taken some time.
Would phones need new bands to take advantage of that?
Yeah, all those bands would require specific chipset support. Some of which Qualcomm and others do support, and some of which they don't.
Interesting. Yeah, we had a comment from Chaim. We appreciate the support. Dish has 400 megahertz in the 12 gigahertz spectrum, which is really interesting. So
yeah, that's like a crazy amount of spectrum too. And people, some of the other, apparently Michael Dell, the guy from Dell Computer, like the billionaire owner of Dell Computer, he actually invested in a company that also has a crazy amount of that 12 gigahertz spectrum. And so they're both trying to get it freed up for 5G. And there's a huge debate right now because SpaceX is also using it for their service. And so there's a big debate about whether SpaceX should be using it or Dish should use it for 5G, or it's a whole thing.
Yeah, that's crazy. Well, as we're kind of wrapping up the show here, Mike, we had a question from a Patreon supporter asking, what did you think about 5G, and what do you think other carriers, Verizon and AT&T, will do to catch up? Will they catch up soon, or is T-Mobile really that far ahead of the others?
T-Mobile is pretty far ahead. I mean, everybody kind of agrees that, this is their lead to blow. And, they just have a lot of momentum. And in 5G, I mean, eventually Verizon and then AT&T will catch up. I honestly don't think that there's a huge amount of demand for 5G right now.
Yeah.
I don't have it. I don't need it.
You don't have it? You're an AT&T. Do you have a 5G phone, Mike?
I have one that says 5GE, which is not 5G. It's actually
you got
LTE.
the fake 5G.
I got the fake 5G.
The funny thing is, when I tested 5GE on AT&T, it was often faster than actual 5G was.
Yeah. That's the thing is all the different flavors of 5G. It's so complex, and it's just for the regular consumer that's just a bunch of nonsense. They don't care about that.
Yeah.
They just want to be able to make calls and watch videos, and you can do that on LTE. Honestly, I just don't. What's really going to be the thing is that when Apple has some sort of goggles that have artificial reality, and it's this fancy new service that really requires these blazing fast speeds and low latency, but we're just not there yet. We just don't have those devices, and so I'm fine on LTE. I have no ambitions to upgrade to 5G. I don't see a reason to do it.
That's so funny. So you're covering all of this incredible 5G tech, but you yourself, you're rocking LTE. What phone are you using, Mike? I'm kind of curious.
I'll show you.
Yeah.
It's a black slab.
Oh, okay.
Uh-huh.
Oh,
it's an iPhone. Okay.
It's going to be a 10
I couldn't
or
tell you.
10S.
I think it might be a 10 or 11. I don't know. I can't remember.
Sweet. Yeah, no.
It's a black slab. They all look like black slabs now. It looks identical to all the other phones.
Well, Stetson's got 4 black slabs that are actually all identical, and I got a ton of different phones as well. Back when phones really looked different. I have the Nexus 6P. I got a Galaxy S20 Plus. Do you remember the Nexus 6P, by the way, Mike?
That was a
Google phone.
It was the last Google phone before they came out with the Pixel lineup, and it was actually the only Huawei phone that I'm aware of that was supported in the US.
Whoa,
that's interesting. Yeah.
You should save that one. You get that autographed by I don't know, somebody.
Sweet.
Biden or Ren, the CEO of Huawei or something. That's a keepsake.
Sweet. Well, Mike, we really appreciate you taking the time to join our show. Is there anything you want to share with the audience? Where can people find you? You're working on anything super cool right now?
No, I really appreciate the opportunity. It was great to meet you guys, and I'm happy to be here. And I write on lightreading.com, lightreading.com, and you can find me on Twitter. It's Mike D Dano at Twitter.
Sweet. Yeah, those are all linked in the video description for anyone who's interested in following what Mike is writing about on Light Reading, following what Light Reading is doing, and you can follow him on Twitter at the link in the show notes as well. So that's going to be it. Mike, thank you so much for joining us. Everyone who's watching, please take care and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.